Hey friends, I hope the morning's treating you well. Hope you got your coffee. I've drank a lot of coffee, but I left mine in the car. I'm in a park outside of Indianapolis, and I'm quite a distance from the car, so I'm going to go without my coffee this morning, but I'm going to do my best either way. I put out a call on Patreon asking the people who support me there if they'd like to ask me some questions, and I would try to answer them. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to try to answer a few of these questions for you guys. And I said ahead of time, but I'll repeat it now. If I don't get to their questions and don't answer your questions, it's not because your questions suck. It's because my answers suck. You know, I want to entertain you guys and make this worthwhile. So if I don't have anything really great to add, then I'm not going to attempt it. So, you know, and I'm kind of a really private person. It's really weird to get on here and talk all the time, but there's a lot of things I just don't want to talk about because I'm private and I want to have that part of my life be a little bit shielded. It's nice to have some mystery. So I'll say that ahead of time. But if there's questions, one day I might do this in the future. We may make it through this and decide this should never ever happen again. But if there's questions you want to ask me, put them in the comments down below, and maybe I'll do it again somewhere down the road. But the first question is Brian, and I don't know where Brian's from. We'll say Brian from Parts Unknown asked me about my hat. Is there like a story behind my hat? There isn't. I bought it quite a long time ago. I've worn it a lot, and I've worn it out. And it's my favorite hat. I have quite a few. I'm about to break out this straw hat for summer, but you know, that's one of those. There's not really a great story. I should maybe come up with a story about a gunfight or something where I got the hole put in the hat. But let's see what else we got here. Maybe Susie from Kimblesville, Pennsylvania, which is about where Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Denmark come to get Denmark. Anyway, but maybe Susie says, wondering if you planted any trees at home. Do you have a garden? What do you grow? We have a very small yard, and it's all covered in trees, so there's nowhere to put them. And so my house in Nashville planted a couple things, but it was really wooded, and there's nowhere to put a garden. So, you know, as you can see, we're off to a rough start here. Sorry about that, Susie. But Kat asked me, she says she's from Stratford, Connecticut. What was the first concert you attended, and what was the first 45 or album that you purchased? This is a hard one. I'll start off with the 45. My first 45 that I remember, I think I got it with like my allowance or something. I'd get like $1 a week for doing about 30 hours worth of work. And I don't know, I'm gonna get off subject, but I have this opinion. You wanna have kids and you want them to learn the value of money and the value of hard work. So you get them some kind of a job, or you start having them do jobs. And they work hard, and then you, after a week of doing all of this stuff, you give them $1. And what that taught me the value of hard work when I was a kid, and I realized hard work was completely worthless. I remember telling my dad after a while, I'm like, how's about I just go ahead and not do any of this stuff anymore, and you can just keep the money. And I think that confused him pretty well. But be careful. Reward those kids heavily if they're working hard for you earlier on, or you just might teach them the value of hard work as nothing. And I will say the jobs that I've had in my lifetime where I worked the absolute hardest, I made the least amount of money. And the jobs I've had that were completely easy, just completely easy, was where I made the most money. The most money I made was just like stealing money, doing nothing. So I don't know. We tell ourselves a lot of stories in life, and sometimes I think that hard work one is a little bit overblown. So now that I've lost about half of you, I'll go back. My first 45, I bought a record called Humphrey the Camel, and it was I think it was like a hit, a minor hit in country radio and in like the Billboard charts in 71, 70, somewhere in there. And I was just a little bitty kid when I bought it. I'll put a link in one of the comments down below for Humphrey the Camel, and you guys can check it out. It's actually, when you listen to it, it's like, well, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a fun, I don't know. It seems pretty, I think it's pretty fun. I enjoy it. The music's a little much, but I really dig the delivery and everything. That's the first 45 I remember getting. The first concert is hard, because what do we consider a concert? I think most of the time people consider concerts somebody from somewhere else comes and plays, and they're probably someone of some level of fame. But I saw people who were local playing. One of them would be like my grandfather playing the Strawberry Festival or something like that with his bluegrass band. And that might be the first thing I saw, but most people don't think of when the local talent play that that's a concert, and probably the local talent don't even think of it as that. You know, you're just in the corner of the room being ignored most of the time. And, but the first time, I would say probably the first concert that I saw would have been at the Bill Monroe Festival, and I would have seen Bill Monroe, Jimmy Martin, Ralph Stanley, and who knows who else, like a who's who of who would have been, you know, the big names in bluegrass in the 1970s, all on the same day, on the same bill. I like to say that that was the first concert. I really don't know, but you know, there was probably a local thing I saw before that, but that's a good one. That's the earliest I can think of somebody of some level of fame. And to think of it as a concert, I mean, it was like a small stage. You could have been to Bean Blossom, you know what I'm talking about. And then the performers just kind of walk through the audience afterwards, and Ralph Stanley selling his own merch, you know, and Bill Monroe standing there, and my grandfather saying, "You see that man over there? That's an important man. You need to go up and shake his hand." And we're walking up, just a little kid. "Excuse me, Mr. Monroe. My grandpa says I need to shake your hand." And he reached down and shook my hand and said, "Good boy, doing what your grandpa tells you to do." And you know, that's my memory of like a first concert. And then it repeated for years as the same people played that festival for a long, long time. And it was a really good, fun time. Other early concerts, I remember seeing Head East at the Marion County Fairgrounds, and I didn't know who they were until they played Save My Life, I'm Going Down for the Last Time. And I'm like, man, that's them people I'm hearing on the radio. And you know, it wasn't much of a concert for them, but they played it like on a dirt track. And what else do I remember? I saw Rick Springfield, I think, at that same place, but that would have been later. Just stuff like that, random stuff. Barbara Mandrell. Would have seen so many things as a kid that I just didn't think of in that way. Usually we think about your first concert, you go down to the arena, you know, and you see Bob Dylan, you know, you go see the Foo Fighters, and you're like, oh, that's my kid's first concert, you know. You think of it that way, but it wasn't like that for me. Maybe you guys are that way. Who were your first concerts? Who was your first 45? And I will say, there's a buddy of mine, I talk sometimes about the place I used to work in, at the Patio. It's a bar I used to work the door at years and years and years ago in the early 90s. And one of the bartenders there was a guy named Rowdy. And Rowdy was, he was a little bit older. That's his real name too. He claimed his mom named him Rowdy. That's pretty damn cool. And I remember people describing him sometimes, he's grumpy a little bit, and a wiry guy. And there were sometimes people describe him like, I don't know, man, he seems like somebody that would hang out with Tom Waits or end up in a Tom Waits song. Like, that's a bad thing, you know? And I'm like, that's pretty damn cool. But Rowdy always said he remembers the very first song he ever heard, and it was King of the Road by Roger Miller. How freaking cool is that? It's like, if you're watching this, Rowdy, I hope things are good with you. I haven't seen him in 20 years or so, but if you're watching this, man, I hope things are good. And if you were lying, I'm not even mad at you. If you're gonna lie to me, tell me a good one, and that's a good one. But let's go back here and see what else we got. We got Brian, who was originally from Seymour, Indiana, now in Colorado. I was wondering if you could tell me how to go about writing a song. Like, what do you say about that? Like, my answer, it's not sexy. It's not, I don't know, it's not what anybody wants to hear. But man, lock yourself in a room by yourself for very long stretches of time with no distractions, no computer or phone or anything, and just sit there until you come up with something. Just work on it, you know? Spend an hour one day just working on it. If you don't get anything, come back the next day, do the exact same thing on the same thing. It's just the day-to-day work of it. The only advice I can give you is maybe to make it easier on yourself, write something that's like the good old beat poetry, rock and roll gibberish, a mosquito, my libido, you know, like some Kurt Cobain lyrics that aren't really saying anything, but people are like, yeah, that's cool, man. That's way easier, you know, than sitting down and writing, you know, William Zanzinger killed poor Hattie Carroll, and then over the next 5 minutes you're going to tell this arcing story. That's freaking hard. You know, or Guy Clark, you know, Randall Knife, that stuff's hard, even though there's no chorus. It's just, you know, the Tom T. Hall song where you're writing a story that starts somewhere, ends up somewhere else, and a lot of things happen in between that keep the people engaged. That's freaking hard, you know. And if you can just come up with something that's catchy and doesn't wop babaloo bob a lot bamboo, try that. Let's try that out first, and that's a little easier. And I don't know, I should like take my own advice on that one. But I don't know, there's no magic thing, man. You just like work at it and you get good at it. There's a writer named Larry Brown who, I think it was in Big Bad Love, there was a story, this has been 20 years since I've read this story, but he wrote a story about someone he knew that really was a terrible writer and was asking for input and this or that or whatever, and it was really bad and it just wasn't happening. This person stuck with it, and you're reading this and you're like, oh my God, they're burying this person. But this person stuck with it over years, and after years they were actually a really good writer, where they stuck with it and did a lot of hard work and they got better. And like in the end of this story, it was a pretty nice little, I don't know, maybe you need to keep that in mind. Your first songs are gonna suck, but you need to write 100 of them that suck before you get to where you want to be. So just write them, you know, and move on. Write them and move on. Just keep trying. It's like if you were writing a book or short stories, I don't know, and maybe your first 10 will be freaking phenomenal, and you can retire for the rest of your life on a private island from those. And, I don't know. I have 3 women walking by with 7 dogs. So I'm looking really awkward right now as they look over at me. So little view of what it looks like from my side of the camera here. Let's see, next question. Let's see. Jake from New Jersey says, I know you don't like to talk about gear. And when I say I don't like to talk about gear, I'm talking about like camera stuff or whatever. Because my favorite channels, I'm getting off subject, Jake, but some of my favorite channels, people are just talking into their iPhone. It's an interesting person who has something to say, and I enjoy hearing and watching them say it. That's what I like. That is way more powerful than if you hire the crew from Jurassic Park to come in and film you talking every day or whatever. You know, if you can't just tell a story, then, you know, I'm not that interested. But so I'm saying, so I don't obsess about gear and like talking about gear, because it's a drag when as a photographer, when you have some photographs that you feel good about, and you show it to some people, and then like, oh wow, what kind of camera did you use? And they're probably just trying to ask a nice question, but what you hear is, it's like they're insinuating the camera did it, and if they could buy that camera, then they could do what you just did. And it's never the camera, it's always the person behind it. Creative people can do things with limited means. And anyway, I got way off subject, but Jake's asking me, do I have a particular bond with an instrument or an amp? And he asked me about 2 hours before I uploaded the video about my Les Paul that I've had forever, that I sanded down. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw it. So I just said, man, just wait till this afternoon and see that video and blah, blah, blah. But another party asked, is there a particular piece of gear that you have had to part with over the years that you wish you had back? And that's a pretty good question. I am like a complete guitar nerd, like old instrument nerd. And I'm lucky where there was this point, I don't know, there's early years where I just bought whatever I could because I didn't have any money, so I bought what I could afford. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get this, man. It'll sound just like, you know, a Fender Deluxe or something like that. So I buy that, it doesn't sound like it. Let down within 6 months, buy something else, but it's way cheaper than the Deluxe. And even then I could have gotten a Deluxe for like $400 or something like that, or a Marshall, you know, an old Marshall. And but I'd spend $100 on this, $150 on that. And then there's this day when I realized, wow, I've bought 5 amplifiers that I hoped would sound like a Marshall. And because I didn't want to spend that much money, but now I have spent as much money or more money than if I would have just bought the Marshall to begin with. And there's a bit of advice for you. I had to move over just a second to get out of the sun, and I don't remember exactly where I was, but you know, I spent like more money than I would have if I would have just bought the Marshall to begin with. And that's a good lesson for everybody, is save up your money and buy what you really think you need, because things that are made to sound like that, they make it sound like that, but they're not that. And what's it say that they're basing their entire thing on trying to sound like that? The one piece of gear that I wish, and I never sold things too, that's the other part I wanted to get to. I kept everything. Once I started getting decent stuff, I just kept everything. I never sold anything. So I ended up with this house full of stuff. And Amy has different decorating ideas than I do. You know, a wall of amplifiers in the living room isn't exactly what she would consider, you know, a good looking living room. To me, it was pretty cool. But when we moved to Nashville, we moved to a smaller house, and I just had too much stuff. And I was playing acoustic guitar. That's what my gigs were, like solo acoustic stuff. And I had all of these electric instruments, all of these electric amplifiers and stuff. And the amplifiers were the things that were taking up the most space. And I just started selling some stuff. And I didn't want to get rid of it, but I just didn't know where to put it. You know, I didn't need it. And I don't regret any of that stuff. But I had a, I had a 1963 Bandmaster that was, you know, like the blonde Bandmaster with the head and the cabinet, and it had a matching reverb tank that was 1963, and the reverb tank just sounded so damn good. It was so cool, and I really dug it, but I hadn't used it in a few years, and I knew I was never going to play that amplifier again because I didn't want to play that loud on stage anymore. And I just sat and thought, man, is this thing going to just sit here? And so I started selling stuff, and I sold the reverb tank to a buddy of mine, and I don't, you know, I was like, yeah, okay, he gave me a fair price. It's worth like at least 3 times that now, and this would have been 14 years ago when I sold it. I regret that because I really, really dug that. There might be better reverbs, whatever the hell that means, but it's a thing, and it does this thing, and it's hard to replicate that because it's like when you play a fuzz pedal. where sometimes it just takes off and goes where it wants to, and you're not really in control. You're just kind of riding it, like it's a little bit of bull riding when you're playing guitar, even if it's in a subtle way. That Reverb was that way. It would do things that I just wasn't quite used to, and I really liked that. And so I wish I had that, because I would be using that today. And if I wanted to buy another one, I'd probably have to spend $3,000 on it. And I am a cheap bastard. That I mean, I got the Bandmaster head and cabinet and the Reverb for I think $1,200 back in sometime in the mid '90s, something like that. And so I made like more money on it when it was over, but I wasn't about that. I don't want the money. I usually, if I would buy something, I would want to buy, if I sell something, I would want to take that money and put it right into another piece of gear, preferably something vintage that will hold value, and I will have whatever I have saved up in my own little personal stock market of gear, even though it's not about making money about that. But I just realized things are going to go up and I won't be able to afford them in the future. And anyway, but that was just one of those. I got rid of a lot of stuff, made things easier around the house, made a little bit more room, and the only piece of that gear that I really miss is that Reverb. So hopefully that helps Jake. But I'm gonna jump off of here, and if you guys have questions, man, tell me. And like I said, all of these questions came from Patreon. I've been uploading some videos on there that are just for those folks, and you know, if you want to come over there and be part of that, that would be beautiful, and it'll help make this channel possible. And having said that, tell me down below any of these questions, if they apply to you, tell me what they are. If you have questions you want me to answer, tell me what they are. I might answer them. It doesn't mean, if I don't answer it, it doesn't mean that your questions suck. It means my answers suck. So anyway, I'll talk to you soon. Much love to you.